Hidden beneath veils of snow and silence, somewhere beyond the jagged ridges of the Himalayas, lies the greatest mystery never found. Shambhala, not a myth, not a metaphor, but a lost civilization whispered about by Tibetan monks, referenced in Sanskrit epics and hunted by spies, occultists, and kings alike. A kingdom untouched by time. A place of radiant beings and ancient technology. Some say it's underground. Others claim it's not on this earth at all, but accessible only when your spirit is aligned. Nazis searched for it. Soviet agents did too. Even the CIA took interest. Why? Because Shambhala wasn't just a city. It was a power, a key to a forgotten truth that could shatter everything we know about human history. This is not the story of explorers. It's the story of erasure, of a world deliberately hidden, and the breadcrumbs left behind, in scrolls, in ruins, in strange behavior of those who get too close. What if Shambhala was never meant to be found? Or worse, what if it already was? Long before the rise of modern empires, before even the sands of Babylon had cooled under human feet, tales were already spreading across Asia of a hidden kingdom, untouched, unspoiled, radiant in its perfection. It was called by many names: the land of the living gods, the pure realm, the inner earth. But in Tibetan and Sanskrit, one name echoed louder than the rest: Shambhala. The earliest mention of Shambhala appears not in folktales, but in revered religious texts. The Kalachakra Tantra, a sacred scripture within Tibetan Buddhism, doesn't treat it as metaphor. It describes Shambhala as a real place, ruled by a line of enlightened kings who guard esoteric knowledge that will one day save humanity during an apocalyptic war of consciousness. These kings were said to live for centuries, possessing not only spiritual wisdom, but technologies beyond imagining. The capital city, Kalapa, was described as geometrically perfect, built around a palace that radiated light without flame. Its streets shimmered with crystal-like stone, and its people lived in harmony, untouched by disease, corruption, or war. The texts spoke of libraries carved into mountains, machines powered by the mind, and maps encoded with impossible symbols. But where was it? For centuries, the debate raged. Some believed it was deep in the Himalayas, hidden in a valley that opens only to those with pure intention. Others proposed a metaphysical answer, that Shambhala exists in another dimension, vibrating at a frequency inaccessible to modern man. Theosophists in the 19th century, including Helena Blavatsky, spoke of Shambhala as the cradle of ancient wisdom, linking it to Lemuria and Atlantis. For them, it was not a city, but a control center of the planet's spiritual evolution. Meanwhile, Asian mystics warned that the pursuit of Shambhala by unworthy minds would bring madness or worse. Many who sought it never returned. Others emerged changed, silent, withdrawn, haunted by visions they could never explain. But something changed in the early 20th century. Shambhala went from myth to target. Western powers, driven by obsession, began to hunt it, not for enlightenment, but for dominance. If this ancient realm did exist, it could hold secrets to energy, healing, warfare, or worse, control over the human mind. And in the shadows of this spiritual beacon, the darkest chapters of our history began to unfold. What did they find? And why have those findings been buried deeper than the ruins themselves? In the early decades of the 20th century, the world stood on the edge of ideological transformation. Empires collapsed, secret societies flourished, and science bled into mysticism. But beneath it all, a quieter race had begun. Not for gold, not for oil, but for ancient knowledge. The kind of knowledge that rewrites history, that grants its possessor a godlike edge. To the untrained eye, these were just expeditions, geographic surveys, anthropological research. But look closer, and the pattern becomes clear. From Berlin to Moscow, from London to New Delhi, high-level operatives began pouring into the Himalayas with strange equipment and even stranger questions. Among them were members of the Unearth, the Nazi occult division. Their mission, to uncover the origin of the Aryan race. But their true goal ran deeper. Heinrich Himmler believed Shambhala, or its counterpart Agartha, held the blueprint for a master civilization. Nazi scientists combed through Tibetan monasteries under the guise of diplomacy, measuring skulls, collecting manuscripts, and interrogating monks about hidden kings and ancient flying machines. In 1938, the German expedition led by Ernst Schaefer reached Lhasa. Publicly, it was a zoological mission. Privately, it was steeped in esoteric belief. The Nazis carried ceremonial artifacts, including a Vril compass, allegedly meant to resonate with hidden energy fields. Locals watched as these foreign soldiers performed midnight rituals and consulted ancient scrolls. But when they left, they said nothing of what they'd found. At the same time, Soviet Russia was conducting its own operations. Nicholas Roerich, a Russian painter and mystic, was sponsored by the US and Soviet governments alike. Roerich wasn't just a dreamer. He believed Shambhala was real and would play a key role in a coming global awakening. During his Central Asian expeditions in the 1920s, Roerich claimed to witness lights in the sky, monastic prophecies, and hidden cities that blinked out of visibility. His journals describe guardians of the gate and windows in the sky. Strangely, even the CIA would later declassify interest in Tibetan geomagnetic anomalies, not for their spiritual potential, but for their impact on mind control and surveillance frequencies. Something in the region disrupted normal cognition. Pilots reported temporal distortions. Locals spoke of entire valleys vanishing behind mirages of rock. Was this all coincidence? Or did governments truly believe that Shambhala held keys to invisible forces, energies not yet classified, powers not yet understood? If it were merely myth, why did so many risk political disgrace, even war, to chase it? Because somewhere, beneath the snow and prayer flags, under the chants of monks and the silence of stone, something ancient was waiting. And the deeper the world fell into chaos, the more certain these secret powers became that Shambhala was not just a place, it was a lever that could move the world. As the hunt for Shambhala intensified, a strange convergence began to emerge, one that went beyond legend and into the realm of cartography, cryptography, and ancient science. Across dusty libraries in Delhi, Beijing, and St. Petersburg, obscure maps began surfacing. Hand-drawn, layered with symbols, etched with scripts that didn't belong to any known language. Some showed a ring of mountains not found on Earth. Others marked an inner land nestled within the spine of Asia, surrounded by impassable ranges and sealed passes. But the strangest among them came not from monks or mystics, but from pre-modern European mapmakers. One such map, found in the private collection of a Swiss noble, depicted the Himalayas with uncanny accuracy, centuries before satellite imaging. At its center, a circular valley marked Sanctus Regnum, the Sacred Kingdom. Another, traced back to a Jesuit missionary who vanished in the 1700s, was covered in spirals and angular coordinates that, when digitized, pointed not to a physical location, but to magnetic anomalies in the Earth's crust. Meanwhile, Tibetan mandalas, spiritual diagrams passed down through generations, began to attract new interest. To the faithful, these were meditation tools, but to engineers and occult physicists, they resembled schematics, energy flow diagrams. Some believed they encoded access points, not physical doors, but frequencies, coordinates of the soul, not the body. Even more curious were the recurring patterns found in ancient texts. Spirals within spirals, serpents biting their tails, lotus flowers blooming within geometric spheres. Symbols that, when overlaid on topographical maps, revealed patterns aligned with the Earth's ley lines, invisible energy currents that some theorists believe connect sacred sites worldwide. But Shambhala was not just hidden in space. It was hidden in time. A translated fragment from a 10th century scroll spoke of a doorway that opens only once in each cycle of the Great Wheel, referring to astrological alignments when certain stars, planets, and lunar positions harmonize. This would explain why many expeditions, even those with precise directions, returned empty-handed. They had arrived at the wrong moment. And then there were the disappearances. Entire teams lost in whiteouts. Monasteries burned in mysterious accidents, weeks after revealing information. One Japanese expedition reportedly made contact with a hidden community and then vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single photo of a staircase carved into rock, leading down into a canyon, no longer found on any map. Some claim these were accidents. Others suggest intervention. Were the protectors of Shambhala erasing paths as they were discovered? Were the maps tracks designed to mislead the unworthy? Or were they puzzles, a test not of intellect, but of perception? Because if Shambhala was built to protect something powerful, not just from humanity, but from itself, then hiding it wasn't just wise, it was essential. Hidden deep within the sacred teachings of Tibetan Buddhism lies a prophecy. Not metaphorical, not poetic, but startlingly direct. It speaks of a future war, not between nations or armies, but between truth and delusion. As the world plunges into chaos, driven by greed, division, and false idols, a dark force will rise, one that consumes not land, but mind. In that moment, when the human spirit has nearly forgotten itself, the kings of Shambhala will return. The Kalachakra texts describe this as the final battle, a messianic war led by the 25th and last king of Shambhala, Rudra Chakran, the wrathful wheel-turner. He's not described as a politician or prophet, but as a warrior of light, who will emerge with an army of the righteous and destroy the forces of deception in a cataclysmic clash beyond the reach of ordinary time. What's chilling is how often this prophecy aligns with modern fears. A collapsing biosphere, digital enslavement, loss of self in a maze of artificiality. As humanity forgets its origins, chases false progress, and sells its autonomy to machines, the conditions prophesied in the Kalachakra are eerily fulfilled. But the prophecy is not merely a warning, it's a sequence. Each stage of decay is mirrored by a step toward awakening. Hidden teachers emerge. Children are born with memories of other lives. Certain places become thinner, as if the veil between worlds begins to wear down. Monks in remote monasteries begin chanting mantras they claim were given to them in dreams by beings of impossible radiance. These events, say the texts, are signs that the gate to Shambhala is beginning to stir. The question is, what is behind that gate? Descriptions vary wildly. Some say it is a realm of pure spirit, where thought shapes matter, and beings of light govern with wisdom beyond comprehension. Others speak of advanced technology, flying chariots, healing chambers, and crystal matrices capable of storing consciousness. Still others claim Shambhala is a seed vault of civilizations, holding archives of knowledge from before the last great flood, and perhaps even from before this version of humanity. In every version, one element is constant. Shambhala is not static. It is watching, aware, active in ways we cannot understand. And when the moment comes, when the wheel of time turns just far enough, it will respond. This is why many believe the search for Shambhala is not physical, but spiritual. That only those who vibrate at a higher frequency, who have transcended fear, control, and ego, can pass through. The true gate, they say, is not hidden in the mountains. It is hidden in us. But for those who lack that purity, the price of proximity is steep. Strange illnesses, temporal distortions, visions that fracture the psyche. The closer one gets to the truth, the harder it becomes to remain intact. And so Shambhala remains, not gone but veiled, not destroyed but dormant, waiting. If Shambhala is real, if it holds the keys to forgotten knowledge, lost civilizations, or non-human intelligence, then why haven't we heard more about it? The answer may lie not in absence, but in deliberate suppression. Since the end of World War II, stories surrounding Shambhala have shifted, from sacred myths and occult fascinations to vague, romanticized folklore. The dangerous implications have been quietly erased. Ancient manuscripts have vanished from libraries. Pilgrims once allowed to visit certain Himalayan monasteries now report increased restrictions, strange monitoring, and even surveillance drones in supposedly unreachable regions. Some researchers suspect this isn't coincidence, that a coordinated effort exists to bury any trace of Shambhala's true nature. In the late 1990s, a private team of geologists conducting high-altitude magnetic surveys in Nepal reported finding an anomalous cavity beneath a glacial basin, over 200 meters below ground, perfectly spherical. Within a week, their permit was revoked. The team was airlifted out under escort, and their equipment confiscated for safety review. None of their data has been made public since. Even more unsettling are the whispers from within the intelligence community. Declassified CIA documents from the Cold War era refer obliquely to psychogeographic distortions in specific Himalayan coordinates, areas that produced confusion, nausea, and dreamlike disorientation in reconnaissance pilots. One heavily redacted file references contact with non-standard human intelligences in a Tibetan cave system, later deemed non-actionable due to metaphysical uncertainty. Translation: they found something, and they didn't know how to handle it. But not everyone stayed quiet. Independent researchers and whistleblowers have spoken of secret programs, off-the-books expeditions, conducted by multinational black-budget teams. These missions reportedly sought dimensional convergence sites, places where time and space were said to bend, revealing fleeting glimpses of non-ordinary architecture, stairways, arches, mechanisms embedded in solid mountain stone. No known photos exist, only sketches and testimonies dismissed as fantasy. Yet the interest hasn't faded. In 2017, satellite data analysts noticed a string of altered image patches along the eastern Himalayas. Areas that once appeared open were suddenly cloud-covered in every satellite pass for months. Independent scrutiny suggested the cloud formations were artificial, repeating pixel-identical patterns indicative of intentional obfuscation. Even Google Earth seems complicit. Coordinates long associated with ancient myths now display broken texture data or are simply blurred. And so the question becomes unavoidable. Who is guarding Shambhala? A spiritual order protecting sacred truth from corruption? A government agency concealing the discovery of ancient power? Or something older, deeper, a force that defends itself from detection by rewriting the narrative? Whatever the case, it seems the silence surrounding Shambhala is not the absence of story. It is the sound of a door being held shut. We often think of lost civilizations as relics of the past, buried in sand, drowned beneath waves, frozen in myth. But what if one never fell? What if instead of collapsing, it simply withdrew by choice? That is the most radical possibility of all, that Shambhala isn't a ruin, but a functioning civilization. One that chose to leave the visible stage of human history and retreat into silence. A silence it may one day break. For those who study esoteric calendars, planetary alignments, and ancient timelines, a clear pattern is emerging. The Earth is shifting, physically, magnetically, and spiritually. And as humanity reaches a breaking point, so too may the barrier between worlds. Many modern monks and shamans speak of the Great Reawakening. They claim Shambhala is not just real, It is preparing to return, not as conqueror, not as savior, but as mirror, because Shambhala, they say, reveals only what the seeker is ready to see. To the pure of heart, it offers guidance. To the corrupted, it offers madness. It is not a place to be taken. It is a place to be earned. Across the world, strange phenomena are surfacing. Children born with knowledge of languages they never learned. Individuals with unexplainable healing abilities. Flashes of cities in the clouds, caught briefly on camera, then vanishing. Frequencies heard by many but recorded by none. These, say believers, are ripples, signals that Shambhala is stirring. What happens when it fully awakens? One version suggests an emergence, not of armies, but of ideas. Shambhala may seed the world with new technologies, philosophies, and systems of living. It may guide without ruling, reshape without force, a decentralized evolution, not a centralized empire. Another version, more cryptic, warns of a test, that in our moment of greatest collapse, humanity will be offered a choice, guided subtly by unseen hands. And depending on that choice, Shambhala will either reveal itself or vanish forever. And then there are those who believe Shambhala is already among us, not as a city, but as a frequency, a state of consciousness, that the real gate was never in the mountains at all, but hidden inside the human soul, waiting for alignment, waiting for remembrance. So what comes next? We may not find Shambhala with drones or expeditions. We may never force our way in with algorithms or satellites. But if the myths are true, if the prophecies were always literal, then we are standing on the edge of something extraordinary. Not a discovery, but a reunion, a return of the forgotten, a restoration of the sacred, a reminder that perhaps the greatest secret ever kept was not how to find Shambhala, but how to become it.